I'm Liz Fenwick. I have a DIY YouTube channel, Liz Fenwick DIY. As you can imagine, I've had my fair share of DIY fails. Each week, I will break down my DIY failures and the craziest fails that you send in. If you have a story you'd like us to share on a future podcast, email us at stories@lizfenwickdiy.com. Hey everyone, welcome to DIY Disasters with Liz Fenwick. I'm your host, Liz Fenwick, and if you guys follow me on YouTube, you know that I DIY almost every day, and with DIYing comes a lot of failures. So I thought it'd be fun to put together a podcast where I share with you my failures that I've done over the years, that some of them are quite hilarious, as well as your failures from DIY that you've sent into me or your disaster stories. Now, I could not have a DIY disasters podcast without bringing in the person that I rope into all of my DIY disasters. I guess just the person I rope into all my DIYs, hopefully to be successful, my husband, Chris.
Hey everyone.
So Chris is here today. I told him I would be reading a story from our DIY history that didn't turn out so well. And I haven't told him beforehand, right?
No.
You know nothing.
No, I'm terrified.
Okay, so let's get started. Now this story, if you guys follow me on Liz Fenwick DIY on YouTube, you probably may have remembered this story. So we bought a 20-year-old RV. And it had green carpet. It just wasn't the cutest, but it was in great mechanical order.
Yeah.
Like we still use it today. It just needed like cosmetic and a facelift.
Yeah, it had low mileage. It was great.
So one of the stories, so we did everything in there. Like we painted cabinets, everything. But the thing that just drove me crazy was when we tried to install the stick-on wallpaper. I don't know if there is some special talent that you need to add stick-on wallpaper, but it literally took both of us and it still turned out horrifying.
The amount of patience needed, I think, is the first. It has nothing to do with putting the wallpaper on itself. It's just the amount of patience needed.
Yeah.
And in balance and coordinating, like it took us, both of us, doing it together, you know.
So I thought if we got peel and stick wallpaper, it was going to go up pretty easy. I love the look of wallpaper, and I really feel like it adds like a cool color pop. And in our RV, it was all white. So we needed something to add a little bit of like pop to it. What I realized was when you're installing it, you think it's going to be easy. You guys, we were only installing 2 panels. Like this was not a whole entire wall, but you really need 2 people to install it because one person has to hold it up while another person is pulling back off the backing paper. And technically, I would even argue that you really need a third person to be smoothing out any bumps. I mean,
I would agree.
Yeah.
And you need like maybe a 4th person for moral support while all this is going on. Because you have to juggle that too on top of all those tasks.
Because it's stressful, and then you start to sweat, and you're just like, these bumps are never going to get out. And once you possibly manage to get that first piece onto the wall, then you have the even larger task of lining up the second piece and making sure it fits on your wall correctly and looks good.
It's impossible. No, it's not. We're kidding. It just takes a lot of work. And probably it's one of those things where over time, I bet if you did it a lot, you would get pretty good at it. But
I mean, I don't know. And maybe like the kind of wallpaper that you use, the paste, is easier than this because you can move it around more. But it's almost like the sticky kind. It's like you have to get it right before you start. So once you actually manage to get it up on the wall, then you have to deal with all of the random bubbles that pop up on your wallpaper and consistently drive you crazy. Like, where are these bubbles coming from? They weren't there.
yeah, I think it has to do with like the texture of the wall behind that paper. So like the texture in the RVs have a little bit, some slight bumps that can let air in little random places. And so like you really can never get them all out.
Yeah.
It's like a whack-a-mole situation. Like you'll never get it right, but yet you want to get it right. And your don't quit attitude like takes over at that point. And you're just, you know.
Well, and then they said like poke a pinhole in it.
Oh, yeah.
And then, you know, the bubble will come out that way. So then we tried to do that. But literally we were just moving all these bubbles around. They would never go on the outside. We kind of just gave up and decided we were going to have some bubbles, I think.
We became happy with mediocrity at that point, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's what we do. We're good with it. We tried.
I mean,
it looks okay.
We
It
have
would look okay.
2 strips hanging up in our bathroom. We do. And I would say if you stand back like 5 feet, I mean, it looks pretty good.
Yeah, if you're not up close and really, with the magnifying glass.
Yeah, you just,
I became okay with it a lot sooner than you did.
like
my give up was like a lot earlier than yours was.
Like immediately.
Yeah.
Pretty much from the start.
I was there fast.
Whenever I see videos on Instagram of people installing wallpaper and they're doing a whole entire wall, I just think, wow, they are an amazing DIYer because there's no way. I mean, 2 strips max is our limit, I would say.
I have trust issues. I feel like that for the 30 seconds that are there, that was really hours of work. And they may have taken several breaks.
It was.
They may have fought. They may have cried. Like, you never know. I feel like those videos aren't really.
I know. But see, even our videos are like that too, because you can make anything look good when you speed it up.
Yep.
And I mean, because even some things that we do where I'm like, man, that was a lot of work. That took a lot of time. I'm like, they sped that up, and that just, it looks so much better when you speed anything up.
Yeah. Post-production work, I think, makes things look a little bit different than what it really was in reality. But in the end, even though some of this is, tough to do, it's tough to put up, like I said, I think we got better at it maybe the second time around.
No, because then we did it in Annabelle's or we did it in Annabelle's desk area, and that was still a struggle.
So we didn't learn our lesson at all.
No, and the fact that I bought wallpaper after that.
Every time I walk into our house and I see a roll of that stuff, I don't know, I freeze. Like, I look at it, sometimes the thought's gone through my head, if I just take this and put it in the trash, maybe she won't notice.
I'll notice.
Yeah, but anyway.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, so our first story is from Patty. Patty says, "Hi Liz, back in 1973, when I'd only been married for 2 years, I decided in our brand new home to decorate the small bathroom in our room. I don't know where I saw this or what gave me the idea, but while my husband was at work, I proceeded to wallpaper the walls with aluminum foil. Yes, Reynolds wrap times several boxes. Oh my goodness. I just randomly came up with the idea, thinking it would sparkle and look cool. I crinkled it a little bit so that it had lots of texture for the walls. I used glue, but I cannot tell you what kind I used. I had a very small Jack and Jill bathroom that had a step-in shower, small vanity, and toilet. So it didn't take that much tin foil, actually. When my husband came home, he went in to take a shower and hollered out to me, "What the heck have you done?" I ran in there and asked if he liked it. And he replied that he would not be using the heat lamp above because he would feel like a baked potato. Oh my gosh, this is hilarious. No one liked it. It came down a couple of weeks later, so we ripped it all off, and because I had used a rubber cement type glue on it, we had to texturize the wall to hide the imperfections. It did major damage to the drywall as well. That is when knockdown was pretty popular, so my husband proceeded to apply the plaster on the wall and then would use a sponge to press and pull it away until it had the desired texture that I liked. I still like that today. I honestly don't know what I was thinking, but at the age of 20, it was my first big home project and still my worst. Some of the trends that were popular back then were macrame plant hangers, wall designs, lava lamps, and mirror squares with gold veins were popular as well, but definitely not aluminum foil wallpaper. Now married 50 years, my husband and I are pretty good at home projects. I love that story so much. I don't think I've ever done anything as bold as aluminum foil, but I love her husband's response that he wasn't going to turn on the heat lamp because he didn't want to feel like a baked potato. That is awesome. Okay, our next story is from Savannah. She says, "My husband and I bought our first home in May of 2020 and immediately jumped into a handful of DIY projects. Our house was built in 1887. Wow. I wonder what area of the country she lives in. So there was plenty of work to be done. We spent countless hours stripping wallpaper, Oh my gosh, that job is the worst. I had to do my bathroom and dining room when I moved into our house, and stripping wallpaper is no fun, especially in a house that old. They were resurfacing walls, sanding, and painting. One of the last corners of our new home that needed some attention was the area behind the wood-burning stove in our living room. Okay, those are so cool. Okay, so I'm picturing a wood-burning stove in your living room. The previous owner had a faux red brick tile behind the fireplace. The brick didn't look bad. I just didn't like the tone of red. So it probably just didn't match her decor, and I thought it clashed with the rest of the living room. That being said, I decided to put new homeowner DIY skills to the test to transform the brick to match the aesthetic of the rest of our room. At this point, our home project funds were running low. Home renovations get expensive fast. I hear you. We are trying to do so many renovations at our home right now, and everything just adds up. And I was determined to refinish the area on a very tight budget, aka free with the supplies I already had on hand. I gotcha. First, I tried to whitewash over the bricks. I would have thought of that idea too, using watered down white paint and a large paintbrush. I practiced the whitewash in an inconspicuous area, good call, and thought it looked pretty good. But once I got started on a larger area, I ran into a few issues. First, it was extremely difficult to not let the whitewash drip all over the place. I tried painting slower or faster or with a bigger brush or smaller brush, but no matter what, there were just drips galore. The second problem was the fake brick grout was so deep that the whitewash wasn't getting into the grout. The brushes just couldn't get into those deep grooves. So the finished product was white brick with black grout, which was not the vibe I was going for. Okay, so her first attempt with the whitewash did not work out. I'm thinking that it's because it was faux brick. If it would have been real brick, I feel like the paint would have absorbed into the brick a lot better. So I think that was the first problem, was that it was a faux brick, and sometimes the material on those faux products, it's just really hard to paint. So I definitely see how that could have been a struggle. So next up, Savannah decided to use joint compound, that's a good option as well, to fill in the grout grooves and create a smear effect. This turned into an absolute disaster. There was mud everywhere. It was a very messy smear, and the tiles were so uneven that it was impossible to smooth out the compound to make the effect I was going for. It was also taking a lot of materials. We had already gone through about 10 gallons of drywall compound in the rest of the house, and I just couldn't bring myself to go buy another 5-gallon bucket of joint compound for something I wasn't even convinced I would like the final product of. Oh my goodness. Okay. So I feel like Savannah's getting in deep with this project, but I love that she's like, keeping at it. She's like, okay, this didn't work, so I'm going to try this. This is me. Like, if it doesn't work, I'll just go another direction. I left the corner about a third of the way finished for about 8 weeks, and a mix of shoddy whitewash and messy joint compound smear. I was exhausted from doing home projects and not sure how else to fix the wall. After watching DIYers on YouTube use peel and stick wallpaper for numerous projects, I thought that could be my perfect solution. It would cover my previous disasters and look presentable until I wanted to invest more money in the space. I spent an evening putting up a blue and white pattern peel and stick wallpaper over the whole wall and was really satisfied with the results. It was a little bit too shiny and showed some of the grooves between the bricks, but from a distance in a low light, it really didn't look too bad. Hey, I feel you. I have done peel and stick wallpaper in my RV that if you get up close, it looks horrible. But when you're standing back at a distance, it's not too bad. So sometimes you just take that because you're so just tired of working on a particular project. So all was going okay until we lit the first fire this fall in our wood burning stove. I didn't consider even a single time that my final project had to be heat resistant. Oh my goodness. The wallpaper started shriveling up and lifting off of the walls. I still feel pretty silly for making such a big oversight. Now the wallpaper is barely held in place by a wood mantle. Every time I have a guest over, I try to press the wallpaper back down and hope it stays before they realize my wallpaper is melting and they see the remnants of the whitewash smear that lays beneath. Oh my goodness, Savannah, I feel for you on this story. I do feel like you definitely came up with some good solutions. Peel and stick wallpaper is just so hard to deal with. I'm trying to think, I don't know if there is an inexpensive solution here. I do feel like eventually you guys are going to have to take down that faux brick and put up another option that's going to be heat resistant. I am thinking of some kind of shiplap, or maybe even there's like a flat brick option you could do. I know they make bricks for stairs that aren't full bricks, but I wonder if they are actual, like a brick form. This next story is from Ruth. She said, I don't know if you're still interested in my disaster story, but here it is. Of course we are, Ruth. We're interested in all your guys' disaster stories. If you guys have one that you're thinking of, email it to us at stories@lizfenwickdiy.com. We would love to share your story on a future episode. Sponge painting was popular in the 90s. Oh my goodness, was sponge painting popular. I sponge painted my childhood bedroom with one of my girlfriends at the time. I remember painting it white, and then we used blue sponge paint all over the walls, and we just thought it was the coolest thing. My mom let us do it. I don't know why, but we were able to paint my entire room. So sponge painting was it in the 90s. So Ruth says that she had decided to sponge paint her bathroom. She said her kids were young, so she chose a Disney-themed wallpaper border with Mickey and the gang riding bicycles, perfect for the 90s. The border was in primary colors, and her favorite color is red. So I painted the walls a base color of white and sponge painted bright red from the floor to halfway up the wall. Then she added like the wallpaper border, I guess, at the middle portion. But Ruth says that the results were just ghastly, especially with her bright red shower curtains that she got to match. A neighbor came over when I was done and told me that it looked like a crime scene. Oh my goodness, I can just imagine this. It's so funny how like we have this certain vision in our head of what we want something to look like, but when we actually create that, sometimes it just doesn't turn out. I do this all the time. I'll make something and I think it's going to look one way and it doesn't look as great. But yeah, I don't even know if there is like a color that I would use to sponge paint. I think in the 90s, we thought just like texture and adding like that like Tuscan contrast was really cool. So I don't know. I don't think sponge paint's going to make a comeback. I really don't. It's just, it's had its day. There was also this thing, you guys may remember this. It was called rag rolling, where you would get a rag and you would put it in paint, squeegee it out, and then you would just roll it up the wall. It looks so bad. I feel like we did another room in our house with this rag rolling technique. It was fun to do, but it really looked like a 5-year-old had rag rolled the walls. So I don't know. I think that all of those paint techniques from the 90s have had their place in time, and we need to leave them in the 90s. But the 90s is coming back, so who knows? All right, you guys. So this next story is from Kaylee. She says, hi, Liz. I have been battling with a DIY for about 3 weeks now. Oh my goodness. Okay. She said, I saw a bunch of YouTube creators gluing glass stones to cups to make a standing fountain. So I thought, if they can do it right, well, maybe I could do it too. Yep, that's what happens. We see these things and we think we can do it. Okay, so she's going to be making a standing fountain. I'm assuming for outside. For one, this thing has cost so much more than I thought. I haven't told my boyfriend, but I have spent close to $30 or $40 on it. For that, I may have been able to just go out and buy a fountain. I used caulking, glass stones, regular stones, glass cups, pie tins, paint, baking soda, floral foam, and a bowl, all from Dollar Tree. It took so much more stuff than I thought it would. I needed several of each item. Now, the structural integrity is just not there. I have coated it in spray or Flex Seal. I've used E6000 and Super Glue brand resin seal stuff. I have waited more than days at a time between glue and product attempts. I'm tired of waiting for it to be done. Now it's just sitting outside. I want to look at the finished product, though I may not get any joy from doing so. And then she sent me an update for this project. Just wanted to let you guys know my partner went to move what I have been calling my creation and it finally broke. I think after 4 weeks, this one may have just been a total fail. I feel for you, Kaylee, because I feel like DIY projects should honestly save you money. And I don't like projects as well where you're like spending just as much on the supplies as you are the thing that you could actually go out to the store and make. What I'm thinking the problem is with this fountain that you were trying to make is there was probably just too much weight for the glue that you were using, because sometimes you just need a really construction adhesive glue, or with those fountains, I would think you would almost need to be able to like screw the pieces together to really give it a better structural integrity. So I'm thinking that's the problem. I'm thinking that the glue was just not strong enough to withhold the weight, but it sounds like you did everything that you could do, but I don't know why it didn't turn out. I've never created one of these fountains because honestly, you guys, on my channel, I try to do really simple and practical DIYs that anybody could pick up and do. And that is super frustrating when you have a project and it just doesn't work out. So I definitely feel you on that one. And I have had so many Dollar Tree fails, you guys. I probably should put more of them in my DIY videos on YouTube because I know you guys enjoy seeing those fails, and that's kind of what prompted this whole podcast. But yeah, it's just some of them just don't work out, and that's okay. I hate that you had to spend the money on all that. Next, I'm going to share some DIY tips that I feel like were inspired by this episode, especially from like the aluminum foil walls. I wanted to give you guys some ideas for different things you could do to your wall just to give it something a little bit extra that's not adding wallpaper, because honestly, peel and stick wallpaper is hard for me to put up and I try to avoid it at all costs. So here's some different things you can do to just add a little bit something extra to your wall. So one is you could paint an accent wall. Pick a color that's just a little bit darker than your regular wall color to really give your room a focal point. Now you can go really high contrast, like go, a deep olive green or a black on the wall. But if you're, a little hesitant to do that, in my primary bedroom, all of my walls are a white color. And to give them just a little bit something extra, I painted the back where my headboard is with the color Accessible Beige. It's just a nice beige color, so it gives a little bit of contrast to my room. So you can consider doing something like that. You could also add a board and batten or maybe some kind of trim detail to your wall just to give it a little bit of visual interest. That's very popular right now, and it's going to give your room just a little bit of texture and interest. Another thing you can do if you don't want something that's permanent, or maybe you're renting, is you could do a large gallery wall with multiple prints, or you could do like one large print that will really draw your eye to that specific wall. That's a great way to add interest to your walls. Now, if you really like the look of wallpaper, you could also consider doing a painted wall stencil. In my daughter Caroline's room, we did a stencil on there. So I got a big wall stencil from a company and I did some painted roses. So I just put the stencil on there with painter's tape and then grabbed some different shades of pink and green and added the stencil to the wall. Now, it's a little tricky to do this, but the benefit to doing this over wallpaper is the wallpaper I would have to take down. This I can just paint over with a roller whenever we want to change it up in her room. There's also a lot of really cool things that you can do with paint. You can, do different masking techniques on the wall. And the thing I love about paint is you can easily paint over it without having to do so many different things to your wall, or like take down boards you put up, or, take down wallpaper. Those are just a few ideas of how you can dress up your walls without putting aluminum foil on them. No offense, Deb. I absolutely love that story and love that you sent it in to me. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. I want to thank Chris for coming in and being a part of our episode. I want to thank Delaney, my content manager, who's behind the scenes. And I want to thank you guys for coming over here and giving us a chance. If you like this episode, consider subscribing. We're going to be putting out new episodes, and we'd love for you to join us again. If you have a story you'd like us to share on a future podcast, email us at stories@lizfenwickdiy.com.